Hey everyone, Art Burns here, wishing you well today. I hope you're all having a great day. I hope that you're meeting the day with the presence, acceptance, and compassion that is going to allow you to cultivate a sense of well being and happiness for yourself all day long, no matter what life throws at you. And I hope that's true for you. And if it's not true for you, well, then you're in the right place because that's what these videos and this podcast are all about. And I hope that you get the benefit of these messages to help you to live a life that's really being led with compassion, with presence, and with acceptance. It's really, really helpful, and I hope that you're getting that from these videos. So today I wanted to talk more about parenting and mindfulness. You know, I've been getting so many positive feedback from some of these videos and some of the talks I've been doing and conversations I've been having, and it's inspired me to do another parenting course, right? I've done these in the past where it's a mindful parenting course, and I'm about to start a new one in the next couple of weeks. So if you're interested in that, if that's something that you think you might benefit from, you know, it doesn't matter how old your kids are, right? Like, you know, even teenage kids, even adolescent kids, even, you know, adult children, you can benefit at any time, any stage of your children's life. You know, the relationship between parent and child can benefit from mindfulness. So if you're interested in that, interested in learning more about that, hit me up with a comment or send me an email and let me know, and I'll get you the information as it becomes available. Still kind of in the planning stage. I'm, again, launching probably in about 2 weeks. So, but one thing that's really interesting is that when I do these courses for mindful parenting, right, almost universally, the parents are coming at it with the same sort of you know, approach that you would have, but with buying a parenting book, right? And that is to say that they're looking for techniques, and they're looking for methods, they're looking for, you know, for ways in which they can parent, right? Because, you know, the thing is that we all want to know that we're doing it right, you know, and that's a big thing for parents, right? It's a big thing that, you know, or I should say, we all want to know that we're doing right, but more specifically, we're afraid that we're not doing it right. And that's what drives these, you know, these industries of these, you know, self-help books and stuff for parenting, or any other aspect of life at that matter, but especially for parenting. I mean, if you go into a bookstore and you look at the parenting section, I mean, there's just so many different books that you can buy, you know. And the reason why these are so popular is, again, because we're all looking for that, you know, that you know, just give me a step-by-step instruction so that I know that I'm doing it right, you know. And well, what I found is a couple of issues that arise from that. And I'm talking about from my own experience with my own children, right? Even the best parenting books that I've ever, you know, my favorite parenting books, the ones that really speak to me, and for me, that includes The Whole Brain Child and No Drama Discipline by Dr. Dan Siegel and Dr. Payne Bryson. You know, those are, to me, those are the paradigm of parenting books, because they really approach it from understanding the child rather than trying to change the child. Okay, but even those books, like when I read through the books, you know, it's like okay, you know, they give me, you know, they tell you like how this, you know, chapter X is about, you know, the development of the brain and how you can like kind of connect to the development of the brain at different development stages of your child's life. And so, okay, so they give you that sort of background, and then they tell you these little stories. And with those books specifically, they tell you about their stories with their kids, and they're hilarious because they're very, very human about it. You know, they tell you where they did it wrong, you know. And so while that's very entertaining and very, you know, awesome, and you know, you're able to connect to them on that level, still, even with these books, and this is universally true with all the parenting books I've read, when they tell you these stories, it's like, okay, but my kid doesn't do that. You know, like that's not the way my kid would. Like if I did everything that you're doing here, my results would be different. You know, and it's impossible, of course, for anybody to write a book that is going to cover every single, you know, potential you know, behavior of every single kid in the world, right? Because every child is different, and that's the thing, right? All of these parenting books, right, and all the techniques and all of the programs that people run about parenting, by and large, what they are about is about controlling the behavior on some level of your children, right? And and again, the reason why we want this is because we're afraid that if we don't do things right, somehow, some way, things are going. Our kids are not going to turn out right. They're not going to turn out good, and that's going to be on us, right? And so we feel an enormous amount of shame about that. We feel an enormous amount of guilt, and we pressure ourselves because of that feeling of shame and guilt, right? So when I work with parents, right, I approach it a little differently because first of all, anytime that you're trying to control a child's behavior, right, you can use one of two basic methods, right? Of course, there's many different techniques, but really, it's going to fall into it's either going to be on a reward based kind of approach, or it's going to be on a discipline slash punishment based approach, right? Those are the two divisions, right? Like that's really the only way that you can sort of try to control a child's behavior, right? And I have to tell you that there are problems with each one of those, right? And most of the problems with each one of those, really reside in the fact that once you're taking that approach to controlling your child's behavior, right, what you're doing is you're breaking that attachment that you have with that child, right? And as I said, the Whole Brain Child and No Drama Discipline, those come as close as I've read. And there's another book that I just heard about, which is called Conscious Parenting, which seems to break the line on this, right? But other than those books that I've read, I've never seen another parenting book that doesn't focus some level on controlling the child's behavior rather than understanding it, and more importantly, rather than connecting to the child on their level, right, and on their terms in a way, right? And so the reason why this is important, right, is because when children realize that you're trying to control them, not only is in the process of trying to control that, not only do you take on this role of like an authoritarian or some kind of, just not like a real attached person in their life, right? Not only does that happen, but really at the bottom line, at the end of the day, the kids are going to reject it. They're going to push away from it, right? Because kids are people, right? And they understand. They can sort of, especially once you get into like the tween years and the teen years, right? They understand what you're trying to do, right? And as they understand that, they feel that, and they're going to push away from it, right? So oftentimes these techniques, I think, wind up kind of, causing more issues than they solve with your children, and I'm not the only person who says this. I mean, I've talked to enough people and read enough books that this is not a necessarily, when I read books about psychology, this is something that's pretty prevalent in those texts, right? Is that the idea is that when you're forming this level of the dynamic of like a me versus them, right? A parent versus the child. What you're doing is you're creating that sort of friction and that sort of conflict. And so when I work with parents, right, what I work with is we don't necessarily talk about how we're parenting the children, right? It's almost like we talk about, instead of the how, we talk about the why, right? And what I mean by that is, we talk about why it is that you feel you need to control what your children are doing. Right now, of course, there's certain parameters, right? Yeah, no. When your kid's throwing applesauce on the wall, obviously we want to try to stop that, and certainly, you can't just let your kid walk into the middle of a street, right? Like, there's certain parameters that we have to create, right? But once those are created, what happens within those parameters, oftentimes taking a more an approach that looks at what it is within the parent that feels like they need to control more than those parameters, right? And oftentimes what the answer to that is, right, is that we grew up with a certain paradigm in mind, right? How our parents raise us. This is something I talk about a lot in my mindfulness training and in these videos. It's sort of the programming of our mind, right? Like as we're, the first 7 years of our lives, right? We're soaking up like a sponge all the different things that we see the people around us doing, right? So our parents, we see how they're treating us, we see how they relate to other people, we see how our friends' parents relate to them, we see how our friends relate to their parents, we see how our parents relate to our friends' parents. You're constantly just observing all of this. This, of course, continues into your teachers, your coaches, your the after school programs, the church people, whatever you're into, right? Like this is all part of what we're building as a sort of a programming of how we're going to relate to the world for the rest of our lives, right? And generally speaking, it's like the first 7 years of our lives, right? And so when we're reacting to things as adults, right, normally what we're doing is we're reacting based on that stuff that we learned back when we were 6 years old or something like that. 5, 6, 7, 4, 3, 2, 1, in those first 7 years of our lives, right? And so and so what that means is that we're doing this automatically, right? We're doing this without necessarily having an intention that is based on what we really understand to be true, right? We're just assuming, we're making these assumptions based on the way that we were brought up. And unfortunately, for most of us, right, there is some level of trauma involved with our upbringing, right? And this is where, this is the reason why we go out and get these books that kind of, teach us how to get a child not to talk back, right? Because our parents, taught us in whatever method they had not to talk back, and if you're talking to me, that was a very physical method, right? It was very punishment based method, which wasn't fun, it wasn't happy, it wasn't healthy, and it wasn't beneficial to the relationship that I had with my parents, right? So a lot of parents, in a lot of parenting books, what they do is they kind of go into these methods of how to get your kids not to talk back, how to get them to be more obedient, right? And then they wonder 10 years later why they have such a hard relationship, why their kids don't want to spend time with them, why their kids don't want to, be close to them. So when I work with parents, right, is what I do is I focus not on the child and the child's behavior and the child's things that are going on, but really what we focus on is the parents, right? Like what I do is I teach you as a parent how to be mindful, how to be present, how to be accepting, and how to be compassionate. And when we can allow those dynamics and those qualities to inform and kind of lead our parenting, then ultimately what happens is the attachment to your children, the attunement to your children on an emotional level, not a behavioral issue, but an emotional level, I'm sorry, not a behavioral level, but an emotional level, when that becomes natural and second, just sort of automatic, right? It becomes just the way that you kind of handle yourself, because you're being present, you're being accepting, so you're being present with what the child is going through as it's happening, right? And in that place, you're not thinking about like, well, what's this going to look like in 10 years, or are my friends going to, am I going to be shamed by the other kids and the other parents in the playground, stuff like that. We're not worried about that. We're worried about being present with your child, being attached, connected, present, right? And accepting, we're being accepting that, what, your child might not be that particular thing that you have in your mind, and that's okay, right? That's okay, because all children are different, and in the span of a lifetime, of the first 20 some odd years of a child's life before they become an adult, lots of things are going to happen. So by focusing on these little behavioral things and not accepting them, and instead trying to change them, we're oftentimes creating more issues than we're solving, right? And then, of course, compassion is, as you're leading yourself with compassion for your child, this leads to a level of curiosity, and it leads to a level of, again, connection and attachment to your child, and really kind of concerning yourself more with their long-term development rather than with just what's happening right here. All right. So again, if you're interested at all, please drop a comment below. Send me a message. I would love to talk to you about how this is all going to work. It's like an 8 to 12 week program. It's going to be very simple, very structured, very helpful for a lot of people, because again, the biggest lesson that I learned as a parent, and when things started to really improve, and I'll tell you all my stories, in while we talk, but the when things started to improve, and not only just with my children, but also with my spouse and with our connection and our ability to connect with our children, when all that started to improve, and the behavioral issues started to go away, was when we started to practice mindfulness and started to really be present, accepting, and compassionate. All right. So if you're interested, hit me up with a comment or send me a direct message. I would love to talk to you more about this subject. Take care. Have a great day. Bye-bye.